What's up and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, August 22nd. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Today on the show, more prospects. They just keep coming. The Yankees are calling up Everson Pereira. The Red Sox are promoting an outfield prospect, Yainer Abreu. James Paxton struggling big time in the second half. We'll talk about that. Zack Gelof hit another home run. Team name Tuesday and much more. Before we get started, help us out by liking this video and subscribing on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. Let's jump in.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Well, hello there, Scotty. You're up. Player of the night.
I'm going to go with Yainer Diaz, catcher for the Houston Astros. Or is he? See, we had some concerns that once Yordan Alvarez was back to full health for the Astros, that the playing time would dry up for Yainer Diaz. But it hasn't. In fact, he has started now. Let me check here. He's started 5 of the last 6 games for them. And the way it's happened is he's become, seemingly, their primary first baseman. Didn't like what John Singleton was doing over there. Obviously, Jose Abreu is out with injury. And at last report, Abreu hasn't even begun swinging a bat yet, so his return is not in sight. Yainer Diaz has been getting starts over there. And if that's the case, I mean, obviously, you know, we don't really care about him picking up eligibility first base, but this is a catcher eligible player getting close to everyday at bats. Because he's a catcher, he doesn't have to quite play every single day, but he's getting a lot of bats as Yainer Diaz, and he continues to deliver with them. 2 for 5 with a home run here on Monday, his 18th home run of the year, his 3rd in the last 5 games. He is quickly, I mean, now that the at-bats seem to be in place for him still, he's I think solidifying himself as a premier offensive catcher, and at a good time too, because also on Monday, Henry Davis, a player who we thought was going to emerge as an impact catcher in fantasy, he just went on the IL himself with a strained hand, and he wasn't performing that well anyway. So you're probably looking for an excuse to make a swap there. And now you have one. Henry Davis is hurt. Yainer Diaz is still playing, still delivering, and I think a better choice over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, and Yainer Diaz is widely available too. He's 48% rostered, so out there in more than half of CBS leagues. The batting average is good. Got 18 home runs on the year, 842 OPS. I just looked this up. Entering Monday, he was the 12th ranked catcher in Roto this season. So even with the limited playing time, he's put up some big numbers for fantasy purposes. Scott, the names I keep bringing up recently, Cal Raleigh, 2 more home runs on Monday. He's up over 80% rostered, but the MJ Melendez's, Keibert Ruiz, would you take Yainer Diaz over either of those names?
I think Melendez is clearly the low guy on that list. Okay, let's go through them again. Yainer Diaz. Who are the other ones? Cal Raleigh.
Cal Raleigh, I think, is above these guys because he's up over 80% rostered. Unless you would prefer Yainer Diaz over him.
I might prefer Yainer Diaz to him. And then the last one was Keibert Ruiz. Keibert Ruiz, I think, is number 1 in points leagues just because his strikeout rate is low. I mean, last I checked, among qualifying hitters, only Luis Ariz has a lower strikeout rate than Keibert Ruiz, which is pretty amazing for a catcher. So he's number 1 in points leagues, I think, clearly. I think number 1 in Roto leagues for me, though, now that he appears to have a close to a full-time role, I think it is Diaz. I think I prefer Diaz. Raleigh, strangely, has been hitting for average of late, but we know that's not going to last. These home runs here on Monday, I believe, were just his 2nd and oh, you know what? That wasn't updated because the game was still going on. Okay, so that was his 4th and 5th in August. Yeah, I guess he's been producing in every way recently, has Raleigh. But I still think I'd prefer Yainer Diaz to him. We know Raleigh's limitations.
Cal Raleigh, hopefully this is right. I wrote down 13 home runs in the second half. So he he's gone off here recently, has 24 home runs overall. And we know when Cal Raleigh, he's pretty streaky power hitter. So when he gets going, he really gets going. So I think I might take him above the rest. But yeah, what Yainer Diaz is doing has been great. One more name here, Scott. Francisco Alvarez has now sat out 2 straight games for the Mets. I read a report that the Mets might kind of take it easy on him over the final month of the season. They don't want to throw too much at him. It's obviously been a very eventful rookie season. I'll call it that for him. Would you drop Francisco Alvarez for Yainer Diaz the way they're both kind of trending right now?
So I haven't actually looked at what Francisco Alvarez is doing.
It's been a brutal August.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's no reason to drop him in a 2-catcher league, obviously, if you want to go with the hot-handed in 1-catcher league, especially if you're talking a head-to-head league and it's crunch time, win or go home situation, then I think you do have to swap him out for the hot hand and Yainer Diaz. I think I'm okay with that.
All right, let's slide over to my player of the night here, and I've got James Paxton. Pessimistic Frank, huh? I've 2 days in a row, a negative pitching performance. James Paxton at the Houston Astros. Obviously, it's a tough matchup, but he gives up 7 runs over 4 innings pitched. 6 of those were earned. Had 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. Still had 14 swinging strikes. It's interesting because he didn't allow a ton of hard contact. 86.5 average exit velocity against. And watching the start, the defense against him was so bad early on. There were a few balls that were basically booted, and they were ruled as hits. And it just kind of extended innings, and it was a very rough, start to this one for James Paxton. And all of a sudden here in the second half, he's made 7 starts. He has a 5.50 ERA, a 160 WHIP, just below a strikeout per inning. Scott, your recent thoughts on James Paxton, and dare I say, do we consider dropping him at this point?
I mean, we could play the fun with end point games here because you gave his second half numbers. In Paxton's 5 starts prior to this one, he had a 2.96 ERA. So, from that perspective, he's been pretty good. I do think he hasn't been quite as sharp overall. The strikeouts haven't been as high either, but no, I'm not at the point where I'd consider dropping him.
Let's check from the weekend the most added starting pitchers. No surprise, all 3 were 2-star pitchers: Javier Assad, Mike Clevenger, Paul Blackburn. Get to Blackburn in just a little bit. Kyle Harrison, who is the Giants' top pitching prospect. He's going to get called up to start Tuesday. Scott, I'm assuming we wouldn't drop James Paxton for any of those names. Well, it sounds like you don't want to drop him regardless.
Correct.
Right. So, I got to test you here. I know you love Cole Reagans.
I do. I thought that's where you were going.
Would you do it for Cole Reagans?
No. I mean, that's a close one. I got to think there's somebody else I could drop instead. Because I do want Reagans on the roster. I think I was actually writing an article here earlier today, and I closed out all my notes on it. But I was writing an article looking ahead at the last 5 weeks of the season. So beginning next Monday through the end of the season. Just some recommendations for crunch time, basically. And so I was trying to size up which teams had the best hitting matchups and pitching matchups rest of the way. Basically, from that point forward, every team will have 10 series left. And, I can't obviously break it down which pitcher is starting on which day, because that's going to change a million different ways over the course of those 5 weeks. But based on the rudimentary way I was doing this, the Royals have like the second best matchups for pitchers to close out the season. So that works in Cole Reagans' favor too. Like whether you're talking about him in terms of how improved he is as a pitcher, the strikeout potential and all of that, or just matchups, he looks like a great pickup down the stretch. So it's a really close call who I prefer between him and James Paxton over that time. But I'm going to lean Paxton still.
Okay. I'm going to test you one more time because on the other side of that James Paxton start, we saw Cristian Javier, who was just blah once again against the Red Sox. 5 innings, 7 hits, 3 runs allowed, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. So 10 base runners over 5 innings, a 2.0 whip on the nose there. This is back-to-back starts with single-digit strikeouts for Cristian Javier. Has not had a quality start. Or excuse me, he has had one quality start since June 21st. We're talking about 2 months where Cristian Javier has had a single quality start. Now up to a 4.52 ERA, a 1.26 whip, still 95% rostered. Scott, would you drop Cristian Javier for Cole Reagans?
I do still think Cristian Javier is going to figure this out, but I have no idea when, and it may not be until 2024. So I think we're at the point now with so little time to go that I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay. He just, I don't know what it's going to take to make him usable again. And I'm not sure we have enough calendar left for me to arrive at that place with him.
Mm-hmm. One other name, Tarek Skubal. He's 78% rostered. I think I would make that swap too for Javier. Would you?
I like the Tigers matchups for pitchers down the stretch too. Okay. They actually have the best matchup. They're the one team ahead of the Royals. So I will say that about Tarek Skubal, but there is the issue of Skubal's only gone 6 innings once since coming off the IL, and that's kind of the minimum threshold for workload wise for you to really make a major fantasy impact. You got to get to 6 with a fair amount of consistency, which Skubal hasn't been doing. So who are we considering dropping him for?
Javier, who I was going to say he hasn't really been going 6 either. So.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. I would be more likely to drop Javier than Skubal at this point. Yeah.
Would you drop Javier for Skubal?
For Skubal, I guess so.
Yeah, I think I would too. All right, let's talk about some of those prospects who got called up. I mean, it feels like we've led every podcast recently with all these prospect promotions. This is the time of year where we're inside of 45 days left in the season where you could preserve that rookie eligibility. And plus, for some teams like the Yankees, they kind of just want to see what they have in these young kids. So speaking of the Yankees, they are promoting outfield prospect Everson Pereira, and they're also recalling Oswald Peraza on Tuesday. Pereira is a 22-year-old outfielder. This season in the minors was batting .300 with 18 home runs, 11 steals, and a .921 OPS between AA and AAA. In the, I think it's a 35-game sample in AAA, the exit velocity readings look great for Everson Pereira. 92.8 average exit velocity, 114.5 max EV. Strikeouts have been a bit of an issue here, but he's only 11% rostered. Scott, your thoughts on Everson Pereira and your interest level in adding him for fantasy?
Yeah, the exit velocities look great. The plate discipline numbers look terrible. So it's a classic case of unstoppable force meets immovable object. And it could go a few different ways. There is upside because of how hard he impacts the ball. And it does sound like he's going to get a lot of playing time for the Yankees down the stretch. So I'm not going to ignore Everson Pereira, but I wouldn't describe myself as optimistic about his chances of impacting in fantasy, delivering in fantasy. I think outside of deeper 5 outfielder leagues, there's no hurry to pick him up. You can kind of just sit back and wait and see how it goes. And so that's the approach I'm going to take with it.
Mm-hmm. Would you do it in a 12-team 5 outfielder league?
Yeah, I don't think
deeper than that.
Look, I'm thinking of I got a bad 12-team roto league out there that probably my lowest player is Matt Wallner, and that's on a bad team. And I wouldn't drop Wallner for Pereira. So I have a hard time in a 12-team league, even 5 outfielder 12-team league. Yeah, I have a hard time seeing how I'd make room for Pereira.
Okay, so again, Everson Pereira is the name there. If you play in a 15-team league with 5 outfielders, he's the one that you're looking at. Or I guess if you're just really desperate for power in anything shallower than that, but more so a deeper league add. Oswald Peraza, Scott, we've kind of seen him a few times here with the Yankees. I think it's kind of just a wait and see approach, right? Like, let's see if he gets hot and then maybe we'll pick him up, but I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is probably, it sounds like the way the Yankees are talking that this is going to be the longest, this is going to be the most runway that Oswald Peraza has gotten so far. So that gives me some hope that maybe he'll live up to his potential this time, but we haven't seen him do that to any degree all the other times he's been up. And usually a return trip to the majors after a prospect's already debuted, and in Peraza's case, that's He's been up a few times. Usually there's not a lot of excitement for the return trip from the prospect who didn't stick the first time. So I don't think you're going to have a lot of competition for his services.
All right. 2 other prospects here. I missed this one on Sunday, but the Tigers also promoted their outfield prospect, Parker Meadows, who is the brother of Austin Meadows. And Parker is 23 years old, a former second-round pick back in 2018. This season in the minors was batting .256 with 19 home runs, 19 steals, and an .811 OPS. The other name here, right before we went live, I saw a report. The Red Sox are promoting outfield prospect Yainer Abreu. Sounds like Jarren Duran could wind up on the IL. And Abreu is a little bit older, 24 years old. He was batting .274 with 22 home runs, a .929 OPS in the minors this year. Scott, any thoughts here on Parker Meadows and Yainer Abreu?
Yeah, I think they're both interesting. Not so interesting that they'd be on anybody's top 100 list, probably. So also examples of prospects you don't need to rush out and add right away, but worth keeping an eye on because they were productive hitters in the minors. Parker Meadows, the data looks decent for him. It's not a case. It's not a case of a guy who the numbers look fine and then you dig a little deeper and it's like, oh my gosh, this guy doesn't hit the ball hard at all. It's not like it's amazing. It's not like he crushes the ball, and that, playing in Detroit, that still might be a shortcoming for him, but he has some speed. He plays good defense, as I understand it. So that should help him stay in the lineup if he's hitting at all. So I'd keep an eye on Austin Meadows. I'm even more excited about Yainer Abreu. I have even more hope for him. I didn't see, when I first heard the news he was coming up, I didn't see the opportunity for him. Like, they're already overloaded in the outfield as it is. But if Duran is indeed going on the IL, then maybe Yainer Abreu will get a chance to play some, at least against right-handed pitchers. He's a left-handed batter. Good on-base skills, good power. His power mostly comes from a high fly ball rate. So that's going to compromise his batting average, particularly since right field, other than around Pesky's pole, right field's pretty big in Fenway Park. But like I said, he walks a lot, and we'll see if he gets hot enough to attract some interest in fantasy.
How would you rank the 3 here? Yainer Abreu, Parker Meadows, and Everson Pereira.
I think Pereira is the most boom or bust of them, but I think he has to be number 1. He has the most upside. He has the clearest opportunity. So he'd be number 1, followed by Yainer Abreu, and then Parker Meadows.
All right, let's talk about a few waiver wire pitchers. Mentioned the names earlier. They were among the most added starting pitchers this week because of their 2-start status. Javier Assad has turned in 3 solid starts in a row. He was at the Tigers, where he allowed 2 runs over 5 1/3 innings. He had 4 strikeouts and does a good job limiting hard contact, something I have noticed with him. He does not get strikeouts, does not get whiffs. So what you want to see is, does he get ground balls? Does he limit hard contact? And he does a pretty good job of both of those things. Javier Assad, a 3.13 ERA and a 1.25 whip. Paul Blackburn now has a quality start in 4 of his last 5 outings. He was facing the Royals on Monday night, 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts with 11 swinging strikes on 82 pitches, and lowers his ERA down to 4 on the nose. Scott, any interest outside of the 2-star week? Let's just say rest of season interest in Javier Assad or Paul Blackburn?
More so in Blackburn. I don't see enough there with Assad to get to overcome the poor strikeout ability. I mean, that's the worst thing a pitcher can do is not miss bats. The best thing a pitcher could do is miss bats, of course. So for a pitcher to get away with not missing bats in the modern game, he has to really just be lights out at something, whether it's a ton of ground balls, a ton of fly balls, weak contact, amazing control. And I don't really see any of that with Assad, so I remain skeptical about him. Blackburn, so you mentioned 4 or 5 quality starts. If you look at Paul Blackburn's last 6 starts, a 2.25 ERA, exactly a strikeout per inning. The whip's kind of high, but he's been delivering usable fantasy starts here, going 6 innings with consistency, which I like. And he does excel at limiting hard contact. His average exit velocity and hard hit rate, both 90th percentile, meaning both of them are very low, among the 10 best among the top 10% in baseball in terms of hard hit rate and average exit velocity for Paul Blackburn. And I think he does it because he's another one of these pitchers. And we talk about this with Mitch Keller and Joe Musgrove. He's got this 6-pitch arsenal. And I think he mixes it up so much. He keeps hitters off balance and is able to limit damage. We've seen stretches of success from Blackburn in the past. Just last year, he was usable at times, and I think he could be usable again. It's obviously undermined by pitching for a terrible athletics team that is going to make it difficult for him to win games, and wins are the most important pitcher stat, the most valuable pitcher stat anyway. So that's an issue. But I think we have, 4 of his last 5 quality starts. I think we'll see even more quality starts here down the stretch from Blackburn.
2 pitchers who you likely will not see quality starts from are Slade Ciccone with the Diamondbacks and Bailey Falter, because they are mostly bulk relievers, but they did have good outings here on Monday. So a quick mention, Slade Ciccone, 5 innings, 1 run allowed with 2 strikeouts up against the Rangers. And for Bailey Falter, he allowed just 1 run over 6 innings of work with 8 strikeouts. And his velocity was up across the board here for Bailey Falter. Fastball up 1.6 miles per hour to the curve, and slider up around 1.2 miles per hour as well. I don't think there's much here, Scott, but any thoughts on Slade Ciccone and Bailey Falter?
I mean, Falter had a successful minor league season and a successful run with the Phillies late last year. That in some of those deeper roto leagues, those 15-teamers, he was getting drafted late in a lot of them that I saw. So I think there's a chance he's worth streaming at some point down the stretch, but I don't think there's a ton of upside. I don't think there's even as much as for somebody like Paul Blackburn. So I want to go crazy for him or anything.
All right, fair enough. Let's take our first break. When we return, we'll talk about some waiver wire hitters. These guys, they're slowly creeping up there. Josh Bell, another home run. He's 74% rostered. Zack Gelof up to 73%. We'll talk about both of those names right after this.
The man, the myth, the Messi. Catch Inter Miami take on FC Cincinnati in the U.S. Open Cup on the all-new Golazo Network.
Welcome back, and a quick reminder to sign up for our Fantasy Baseball Today Facebook group. You can do so at facebook.com/groups/Fantasy Baseball Today, or if you have the app, just go on the website, just search Fantasy Baseball Today. You'll find it that way, and you can join the group, and you can start asking questions with other listeners, waiver wire questions, trade questions, dynasty, whatever you've got going on. Again, you could do so in our Fantasy Baseball Today Facebook group. If you're watching us live, you could scan the QR code. That will also take you right to the link. Let's talk about some waiver wire hitters here, Scotty. And Josh Bell continues to mash with the Miami Marlins. He went 2 for 4 with his 18th home run. He is 74% rostered. The problem with Josh Bell is I think we're getting to a point in the season where you can actually question whether or not you want to drop a first baseman you maybe held on to all year, someone that might be struggling. So I'm trying to find the right... there's not really anyone that really makes sense for what I wanted to do here. But Josh Bell, 74% roster. Do you think that number needs to be higher? Do we need to be closer to 100% at this point?
Yeah, I think so. It always... For the year prior to him being traded to the Marlins, it seemed weird why he was performing as poorly as he was. The data still looked good. The exit velocities, the plate discipline, it all still looked good for Bell. And this has kind of been the story of his career, extreme highs and lows, while the underlying numbers still look strong. But he seems to be reinvigorated, or seems to have fixed something that was wrong with him with this, with him being traded to the Marlins. And so I think he's worth using again, even if it's not at first base, then it as a utility hitter or a corner infielder or whatever. I understand how in some of those smaller head-to-head leagues, you just may not have any reason for him. You only go so deep into the hitter pool in those leagues. But somebody in your league could probably use him.
Yeah, so I was looking at my rankings to try and find a name just ahead of him that I would drop for Josh Bell, and I can. I mean, Spencer Torkelson I have just ahead of Josh Bell, and he's red hot. He just hit another home run on Monday. Ishak Paredes has been pretty consistent all year long. I don't think I would drop Paredes for Josh Bell, would you?
Maybe. I mean, obviously Paredes can play more positions for you.
Yeah. You get into Alec Boehm. Maybe Josh Bell has more upside. Boehm's been rock solid though, man. Like all year, he's been good. So I don't think I would make that swap either.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to universally. People's leagues don't directly follow our roster rates, of course. So it's not going to be a situation like the player somebody's dropping for Josh Bell isn't necessarily going to be a player who's more rostered than Josh Bell.
Fair.
Yeah, the ones you mentioned are all pretty good. And I don't know that I don't know that you're the one who needs Josh Bell if you already have those players. So that's fine. I do want to mention this for Torkelson because I thought this was an interesting note since he did have another big game here. Homered once, 4 for 5 with his 23rd home run, his 28th double. He's batting .294 with 8 home runs now in August is Spencer Torkelson. And since June 12th, more than 2 months, basically half the season so far since June 12th, Spencer Torkelson is the 5th best first baseman in points. And the only 4 ahead of him during that stretch, Matt Olson, Freddie Freeman, Christian Walker, Cody Bellinger.
Wow.
So he is in elite company there for the last 2.5 months. That's
huge. It's happening. It looks like it is happening for Spencer Torkelson, who is up to 82% rostered. I guess we could just talk about Kerry Carpenter too. I mean, we continue to mention his name. He went 3 for 5 with his 19th home run, also having a massive August, batting .371 with 8 homers and an 1192 OPS. He's up to 69% roster. The next step for Kerry Carpenter's roster rate is, does he need to be rostered in 3 outfielder leagues, Scott? Points leagues, head-to-head category leagues. Your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I think he's definitely in the discussion. I was weighing over the weekend whether to swap out who was it? Whether to swap out my 3rd outfielder in such a league for him, and I ultimately decided against it. It was Chas McCormick, so obviously he's been pretty good too. He just had a 2-homer game. But I think they're basically in the same category, those two. And I guess McCormick's in the better lineup and has a chance to contribute some stolen bases as well. So I would give him the edge, as I obviously decided to do in this league. But Carpenter's not far behind. If you have a worse outfield than that, I definitely think he's worth considering. And just like I was looking at the teams with the best matchups for pitchers over the final 5 weeks, I was doing the same for hitters. The Tigers, I said they have the best matchups for pitchers during that stretch. They're one of the top 4 teams in terms of hitter matchups too. So that's all the more reason to invest in Carpenter or Torkelson if he happens to be available in your league. Only true in 18% of CBS sports leagues, but I imagine he's out there in more leagues on Yahoo and ESPN.
Let's slide over to Zack Gelof, who went 1 for 4 with his 9th home run, and so far batting .306 with those 9 home runs, 7 steals, and an OPS just over 1,000 in 32 games so far. The home run he hit on Monday, 428 feet to center field. And then, it was pretty impressive. I was interested in the way that he hit the home run. I'm like, all right, well, where has he been hitting his home run so far? 5 of his 9 home runs, Zack Gelof, have either gone to center field or right field. So, again, the power, it looks legit. He's going to all fields. He's got, I think, 4 to left field, and then he's got some to center. He's got some in right field. Zack Gelof up to 73% rostered, and I know you had him as your top sleeper hitter this week, Scott. I think an interesting name is Trevor Story. Trevor Story is off to a brutal start. Would you make that swap?
He had the 4-hit game, and I think he's done literally nothing else, right? As Story. I mean, as hot as Gelof is, you have to. I don't want to drop Story really in any scenario, but I think Gelof is more rosterable at this point. And I kind of put myself in a no-win situation, right? Or maybe it's a no-lose situation. I don't know. I made him, so I've been talking about how he's bound to regress here from this slow start, bound to cool off. There are some underlying numbers I don't like with him. But I also had him as my number one sleeper hitter this week. So, like, whether he was good or bad, I would be able to accept some blame for it.
You're hedging the bet on Zack Gelof, huh?
I mean, that's the positive way to look at it, I guess.
Some people tweeted at me that his strikeout rate has been coming down recently, and let's see, it's
not bad.
26%. That is better than where it was a week ago.
But look at his minor league strikeout rates. Pretty consistently up near 30%. Right. So
okay.
I would trust that over what he's like. That's kind of more indication. Oh, he's hot right now and he's bound to cool off because he's exceeding his strikeout rates in the minors, which seems illogical given that he's facing much tougher pitchers now.
Yeah. Let's talk about Seiya Suzuki, who went 2 for 4 with his 13th home run. And over his last 9 games since returning from that mental break, they gave him a couple of games off. They said, sit you down. We'll hopefully get you back on track. Last 9 games for Seiya Suzuki, batting .313 with 3 home runs. And obviously this Cubs lineup is red hot in the second half of the season. I'd like to get a piece of them any way I could. Obviously, I like Seiya Suzuki a lot coming into the year. He's 58% rostered. I'd rather have Kerry Carpenter, Scott, but is your interest growing with Seiya Suzuki over the past, 9 games, what he's been doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Kerry Carpenter too. But Seiya Suzuki is another one of those hitters who I think could be a nice pickup for the stretch run based on what the Cubs hitting matchups look like over the final 5 weeks.
All right, let's slide over to Endy Rodriguez, who went 3 for 4 with a walk, an RBI, and 2 runs scored. And he hit a single 110.4 miles per hour off the bat. And he's been coming around, Endy Rodriguez. His last 12 games, batting .368 with 1 home run and hitting the ball harder. The plate discipline looks pretty good. I think this is more for 2-catcher league, Scott. But Endy Rodriguez, 21% rostered. How would you rank him, Logan O'Hoppe, and Gabriel Moreno, who we spoke about yesterday?
I would rank Endy Rodriguez last of that group, and I would rank Logan O'Hoppe first. You mentioned Endy Rodriguez hit that ball 110 miles per hour, right? That was 3 miles per hour harder than his previous hard hit ball, which maybe says something about the max exit velocity stat. I don't know. But it was a well-struck ball, and yeah, he's been hitting better lately. It's been mostly singles. It was all singles in this one. I think I'm more scouting Endy Rodriguez for next year than seeing him as a viable fantasy option, except in 2-catcher leagues, obviously, where you have to go very deep at the position.
I think in the Memorial Magazine League that we play in together, Logan O'Hoppe was available, and I dropped Endy Rodriguez to pick up Logan O'Hoppe. And it sounds like that's a move you would make too.
Yes, I would.
All right, let's talk about Elvis Andrus. That's right. 2 days in a row, I got to talk about Elvis Andrus. He went 2 for 5 with a double and a run scored. And over his last 14 games, he is now batting .386 with 2 homers, 4 steals, and a 90.5 average exit velocity. He is 11% rostered. Scott, would you take Andrus over any of the middle infield prospects we spoke about, Noelvi Marte or Mason Wynn?
I would take, I think Mason Wynn first of that group. It's a more difficult call with Noelvi Marte because we don't know what the playing time's going to look like. And Wynn hasn't done anything yet. I understand it's obviously just a couple games that he's played, but I do think he is capable of contributing in the most ways. And I think he's the best choice of that group. Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got two hitters in deeper leagues here, Scott. Johan Rojas with the Phillies went 2 for 4 with 2 RBI. And so far in 28 games, he is batting .296 with 1 homer and 6 steals. Very fast, 95th percentile in sprint speed. He does have a little bit of pop. This year in the minors, he had 9 home runs, had the 30 steals. He was batting over 300. He's 11% rostered, plays mostly every day for the Phillies. And DJ Stewart went 2 for 3 with his 6th home run. And over his last 6 games with the Mets, he has 8 hits, 5 homers, and 9 RBI. We're talking deep leagues here, Scott. 15 team, 5 outfielders. Any interest in Johan Rojas and DJ Stewart?
They do certain things well, but I don't think they do anything else well enough. So Johan Rojas plays good defense. He runs fast. Probably not enough power to get excited about. And Stewart, lots of power, but this is far from his first opportunity in the majors. And, just because he's on a bit of a home run binge right now, I doubt he's going to emerge as a startable option. I think he hit 220 something at AAA this year, 224 or something like that. So I think outside of NL only leagues, you can pass up these guys.
Honestly, I think if you just merge them together, they probably would make a pretty awesome baseball player, right? It's kind of like the defense and the speed from Johan Rojas, the power from DJ Stewart.
If you have a way of doing that, Frank, you could be a very wealthy man.
Yeah, well, I'm on it, Scotty. One thing I'll point out with DJ Stewart, entering Monday, his expected stats, 274 XBA, 585 X slug. So I'll just throw it out there. Let's see where DJ Stewart goes from here. Some news and notes. Mike Trout could be activated from the IL ahead of Tuesday's game. We heard the same thing before Monday. That game was postponed. So perhaps we do see Mike Trout on Tuesday. Wander Franco is expected to remain on the restricted list or shifted to the administrative leave as Major League Baseball continues its investigation. I've had some people ask me, Scott, when it's time to drop Wander Franco. Obviously, we have no idea where things are going to go, but if you play in a shallow redraft league, I don't know. What do you think?
That's all I have. Wander Franco in as a shallow redraft league, and I haven't dropped him yet. But I think at the next opportunity, I'm going to.
All right.
Now that's again a shallow league. I mean, it obviously depends what's out there, but I would strongly bet against him playing again this year.
I think you're probably right about that. I think in any league where it is a hindrance for you to hold on to him, where you're missing out on other free agents, or if you play in a daily lineup league and you just need that bench spot to keep shuffling through players that you either want to stream or whatever it might be, then I think you probably could let go of him in those formats. Braves manager Brian Snitker does not believe Ozzie Albies will play in a rehab game before being activated. He was placed on the IL last week with a left hamstring strain. Thairo Estrada was hit by a pitch on the hand on Sunday and was out of the lineup Monday. X-rays came back clean, so it appears just soreness for now. He did have surgery on the hamate bone in his hand earlier this season, so something to monitor and watch with Thairo Estrada. We mentioned this earlier, but Henry Davis was placed on the IL with a strained right hand. Unfortunate timing. If you play in a fab league, we didn't find this out until Monday. You're basically just stuck with him, right? He's locked in your lineup. Tout Wars for me, it's a 2-catcher league. I had Henry Davis, and obviously I'm not carrying a third catcher on my team, so
right.
That sucks. Yeah, he's locked into your lineup. Not great. Kyle Wright will begin a rehab assignment Thursday at High A. His right shoulder checked out fine during his recent live batting practice sessions, and he is 62% rostered. Scott, who would you rather stash right now, Kyle Wright or Nick Lodolo?
Lodolo, because he has a lot more strikeout potential. And he also benefits from a very pitcher-friendly schedule down the stretch, more so than Wright or the Braves as a whole do.
All right, let's move over to Brian Wu. He is scheduled to start Tuesday against the White Sox. And would you be okay starting him in a daily lineup league, Scott? First start back for Brian Wu.
It's a good matchup, but he was pretty shaky leading up to that IL stint and is hardly a proven commodity. I'd rather not start him in a daily league. I don't even know He's not, I can't imagine he's that widely rostered at this point, right?
I think he's 44%. I think he's out there.
So no.
All right. Ryan Helsley is undergoing another round of tests and evaluation as he continues to experience pain in his right forearm. My guess is Jojo Romero probably leads the Cardinals in saves for the rest of the season, as long as Helsley is out.
Well, maybe. I mean, Gallegos has gotten one since the Jordan Hicks trade as well. But if I was picking who would get the most saves going forward, yes, Romero. But I don't think it's going to be I don't think he's the clear-cut closer or anything.
All right. Nolan Gorman hit off a tee on Monday and plans to increase baseball activity. He was placed on the IL last week with a back injury. Mitch Haniger will begin a rehab assignment at AAA on Tuesday, and he's been out since mid-June with a fractured right forearm. Mitch Haniger, 32% rostered, struggled in 2022, hit 39 home runs back in 2021. Do you have any interest in stashing Mitch Haniger, maybe in some 5 outfielder leagues?
That would 15 teams, 5 outfielder leagues. That's the only format that I think I'd even consider it. I just don't think Mitch Haniger has much left at this point, and particularly playing for the Giants, I don't feel confident that he's going to get consistent opportunities to prove he does.
Well, I just checked one of my 15-team leagues, and Mitch Haniger is out there. So who knows? Maybe I'll go pick him up. Zack Greinke is expected to return Tuesday and start against the A's. He's been out since August 8th due to elbow soreness. I think that's a big old no on starting Zack Greinke, obviously. Jarren Duran held out of the lineup Monday with a left toe contusion that he suffered on Sunday, and there is a chance that he lands on the IL. Tyler Soderstrom was optioned back to AAA after batting just 165 with 2 home runs in 27 games. Ryan Noda was reinstated from the IL as a result. Vaughn Grissom got his first start with the Braves since being recalled. It was against a lefty here on Monday. He finished 2 for 4 with a double, and I'm not expecting much playing time here, Scott. I assume the same for you with Vaughn Grissom.
I mean, based on what you just shared about Ozzie Albies, that he's not expected to need a rehab assignment. The fact they're bringing that up now suggests he's close to returning. So even without taking Nicky Lopez out of it, I don't foresee much playing time for Vaughn Grissom either.
All right. Emerson Hancock was placed in the IL with a right shoulder strain. Johnny Cueto was placed in the IL with a viral infection. Ryan Weathers started in his place on Monday. Luis Medina was placed on the IL with a blister on his right index finger, retroactive to August 19th. And 2 quick prospect updates. The Pirates promoted their first overall pick, Paul Skeens, to AA, bypassing single A entirely. And over the weekend, we saw something similar from the Nationals. They promoted the second overall pick, Dylan Cruz, to AA. And in 14 games at A-ball, he hit .355 with 5 homers, 24 RBI in 14 games. Crazy. And 1068 OPS. Those guys are coming soon, Scott. I think we could see Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz as soon as next year.
I mean, Wyatt Langford, I think also.
Yeah.
He hasn't quite made it to AA yet, but he has looked very good, mostly at high A. And those three. If you have a first-year player draft in your dynasty league, you want a top 3 pick.
Oh, yes.
For sure.
Wyatt Langford, by the way, was the 4th overall pick. He went to the Texas Rangers in this year's draft. Let's take our final break. When we return, got some hitters who are heating up. We'll do a quick mention on those, then some leftovers. We'll do some Team Name Tuesday, all after this.
Driving into the stadium, seeing everybody tailgating, I get that ready to go feeling.
You know, to walk through the fan section over there and see that many people excited about football, so I'm really looking forward to it.
You get away from football for a little bit and then you start missing and you get that itch again.
For me, that first catch is everything. Once I get one catch, I'm in the zone.
Getting back to football.
It's been too long.
We can't wait.
Can't wait.
We can't wait.
We can't wait.
Welcome back. Let's run through some hitters who've turned it on recently. Bryce Harper went 2 for 5 with his 10th home run, an inside the park homer. You'll love to see it. And so far in the month of August, Bryce Harper batting .309 with 5 homers and a 1024 OPS. He's slugging .632, far and away the highest of any month this season, which I think makes sense, right? Coming back from the Tommy John surgery, takes him a little bit of time to get going. But right now, Bryce Harper looks good, looking very good in August. Francisco Lindor went 2 for 5 with his 23rd home run. And since the start of July, that's 42 games. He's batting .309 with 7 home runs, 13 steals, 91.7 average exit velocity. He's been great. And Alex Bregman went 3 for 3 with 2 walks and 2 runs scored. So far in the second half, batting .299 with 8 home runs and a .953 OPS. Scott, anything you'd like to add on Harper, Lindor, and Bregman heating up?
They are. And I mean, Alex Bregman, you'd be surprised how high he ranks in points leagues at a position with plenty of studs, third base. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick, because it's ahead of, I want to say it's ahead of like Austin Riley, who of course has been hot for a while too. But I'm still looking at that shorter stretch. No, he's actually behind Riley.
Just behind him, yeah.
Yeah, although that may have changed with this game.
Yeah. Sounds like it will, yeah. So he's either
top third baseman in points leagues year to date. Number 1, Bobby Witt.
And it's not close.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Even with the poor strikeout to walk ratio. I mean, the strikeout rate is not that bad on its own, but he walks so little. It's just like I said a couple weeks ago, when a good stolen base total goes from being 20-25 to 35-40, as has happened this year, you know, you may not feel that adjustment as much in roto leagues, because what matters is how many each player has relative to other players. But you feel it in points leagues a lot more, because it's just stolen bases are worth 2 points a piece, and that's a lot more points to be earned on stolen bases. So Witt's number 1, Jose Ramirez number 2, Austin Riley 3, but he and Bregman are basically neck and neck. So ahead of Rafael Devers, ahead of Nolan Arenado, ahead of Yainer Diaz, the points league specialist. Yeah, Bregman, despite the low batting average this year, has still been a points league stud.
By the way, Bobby Witt Jr. mentioned how great he's been. Hit his 25th home run on Monday. He's batting .281. He's got 37 steals. And so far in the second half, he's hitting .340 with 11 homers, 10 steals, and a .1031 OPS. Bobby Witt Jr., league winner, getting it done here in the second half of the season. Let's talk some pitching leftovers. Aaron Nola turned in his first quality start since July 23rd. That's right. Nearly a month without one for Aaron Nola. He was facing the Giants, 7 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts for him. Luis Castillo had a great start at the White Sox, 7 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts to 0 walks. Jordan Montgomery had one of his best starts of the season. He was at the Diamondbacks, 8 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts to just 1 walk. He had 16 swinging strikes on 92 pitches. And Michael Wacha's second start back from the IL was a solid one against the Marlins, 5 1/3 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. Velocity was up a little bit in the start for Michael Wacha, which I think is a good sign, because before he went on the IL with the shoulder, the velocity was down pretty, considerably. So good signs here for Michael Wacha. Scott, anything on him, Montgomery, Luis Castillo, and Aaron Nola?
Michael Wacha, yeah. I mean, he's just the numbers kind of speak for themselves at this point, don't they? And that's following a very strong season last year that everybody dismissed because it looked like it was too good to be true. 3.32 ERA in 23 starts last year with a 1.12 whip. Now the FIP, all the ERA estimators were much higher because he doesn't get strikeouts at a great rate. And that strikeout rate has been similar this year, but the production has been even better. So it's gone the opposite way from what everybody expected. And it still gives me some pause, but at some point you just have to enjoy the ride and not worry so much. Particularly in the year of the glob where 80% of the pitcher pool is susceptible to blow up starts anyway. And yeah, that's my main takeaway from this group.
Speaking of blowups, by the way, with Aaron Nola, 2 more home runs allowed in this game. He has given up 29 home runs this season, third most in baseball, behind only Lance Lynn and Jordan Lyles. So if you're trying to figure out what went wrong for Aaron Nola, home run ball has been a huge problem for him this year.
So
same thing happened back in 2021 when he had a 4.63 ERA.
It did. And so there's that he has that in common between those 2 seasons. And because it's now been 2 of the last 3 years, and because I'm completely divested in Aaron Nola for this. Yeah, that's not true. I have him in one dynasty type league, but I'm otherwise divested in Aaron Nola for this year. I'm kind of rooting for him to be as bad as possible so that it tanks his draft stock for next year. And I can get him as like my number 3 pitcher. Wonder how realistic that is. I want to do it.
My early takeaway is that he probably won't fall that far. You could probably get him as your SP2. I think he's going to fall a little bit, but
what if his ERA climbs over 5? His
Maybe.
Strikeout rate's much lower than 2021 in a way that I don't think is really reason for concern, obviously, because I'm wanting to draft him.
He is a free agent this offseason too, so I think that, that could kind of change the narrative too, depending on where he goes.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm sorry for everyone who has Aaron Nola this year, but I'm rooting against you.
I thought your take was going to be, I'm rooting for him to be terrible so that the Braves can sign him for dirt cheap, like they do everybody else.
I mean, I'd be fine with that outcome too.
Right. I don't know. I'm kind of off Aaron Nola. It's just I didn't draft him anywhere this year, but he's just been so wildly inconsistent. It depends on where the price tag falls. Yeah, if it's SP3, sure, because you're not as invested as when he's like a 2nd or 3rd round pick like he was this year. But I understand why people probably have been very frustrated with Aaron Nola over the past couple of years. A few hitting leftovers. Marcell Ozuna went 2 for 4 with a double dong, both over 108 exit velocity, both over 415 feet. Now up to 26 home runs on the year for Marcell Ozuna. Chas McCormick, you mentioned the name earlier. He went 2 for 3, also with a double dong. He had 4 RBI, batting .286 with 19 home runs, 13 steals, and a .918 OPS. He entered Monday, Chas McCormick, as the 29th outfielder in Roto, 91st overall, and a bunch less at-bats and plate appearances compared to the other names around him. 3.2 fantasy points per game in points leagues, tied for 14th at the position. Chas McCormick has been amazing. It's been really, really good. Ha-Seong Kim went 2 for 4 with his first career grand slam. It was his 17th home run of the year. Speaking of really good, I mean, he's been a fantasy superstar this year. Ha-Seong Kim, 280 batting average, 17 homers, 28 steals, 819 OPS, leading off, walking more, great plate discipline. So regardless of format, Ha-Seong Kim has been amazing this year. Scott, anything to add on these 3? Ozuna, McCormick, and Kim?
I mean, Chas McCormick to me is the biggest surprise in fantasy because I had no inkling he was capable of this. You look at his minor league track record, very lackluster. He's 28 years old, so you figure he's fully grown man. Like what growth is there left to be had? But he has been, it's been so good for so long that it's hard to dismiss. I mean, last 31 games for Chas McCormick, 333 batting average, 11 homers, 4 steals. So a home run more than every 3rd game during that stretch. And you mentioned 14th best point per game average for the season. And that was
before this game too.
Yeah. And that was with some playing time issues early on, right?
Yeah.
That probably deflate that number actually. So very impressive. And I'm reluctant to say he's the sell high at this point.
All right. The call to the bullpen for the Cubs with Adbert Alzolay unavailable. Mark Leiter Jr. got the 9th with a 2-run lead. He did give up a run, but picked up his 4th save of the year. And then the Rangers had a very eventful end to that game. So Will Smith had a rough Sunday. I figured okay, maybe they're just going to give him Monday off. So they bring in Aroldis Chapman in the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. He gives up a solo home run to Ketel Marte. Tie game. Aroldis Chapman stays on for the 10th. He throws a scoreless 10th inning. The Rangers then took the lead in the top of the 11th. And guess who came out for the save? Will Smith. I thought it was pretty interesting. He had a 2-run lead. And what did he do? He gave up 3 runs. He took a blown save and a loss. And
so they both blew a save.
Yeah. Will Smith's ERA in August entering Monday was 9.45.
And now it's a lot higher.
Yes, it is. So
yeah, I feel like the writing's on the wall here. I wish Chapman had come through and gotten the save, but he allowed a solo home run. That's what caused him to blow it. That's going to happen sometimes. Entering today for Chapman, since joining the Rangers, a 1.69 ERA, 0.88 whip, 17.4 K per 9. I mean, as dominant, the numbers as dominant as you'll find for any reliever. And he's not closing for this team. They got Will Stinkin' Smith closing. So I think that's overdue to change. And I think Bruce Bochy is warming up to the idea at the very least.
I have updated numbers in August for Will Smith. That's an 11.05 ERA and a 1.77 whip in the month. Let's move over to stream or not to stream. And we'll start with Tuesday. Who did we say yesterday? I think Zach Littell versus the Rockies. Wade Miley versus the Twins. And Clevenger. I'm getting a little nervous about Clevenger just because the Mariners are red hot. They're on a 7-game winning streak. They put up 14 runs on Monday. That was without Julio Rodriguez in the lineup.
Well, there are lots of reasons to be nervous about Clevenger.
True.
That's an additional one. Unfortunately, we have to pick pitchers here because that is the segment. So I am going to say my first choice is Wade Miley against the Twins. And I'm going to say my second choice is Zach Littell against the Rockies. I'm going to say my third choice is Clevenger. But you don't have to go with, you don't have to start any of them, just to be clear.
Well, we know where you're going on Wednesday, Scotty, because Cole Reagans is on the mound at the Oakland A's. So
he's my top pitcher for this week.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm streaming him on Wednesday. That is a streamer recommendation I can actually say I feel good about and recommend to everybody. So naturally, he's going to give up 8 runs in 3 innings.
Nah, I don't say that. The other 2 names I think are okay here. I don't really like, and I don't like nearly as much as Cole Reagans, would be Jamison Tyone at the Tigers and Mackenzie Gore at the Yankees.
Yeah, I like Gore more than Tyone.
Okay. Team Name Tuesday. We did not get to it last week, but here we are. And we'll start with this one from Scott. Scott White? Probably not.
No.
Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to Puck Wit. So you've got 4 names in there.
You sure do.
It's not bad. It's pretty good. From Steven, Waka Miles in my cruise.
All right.
This one's from Sid. Panic at the Francisco.
What Francisco is that referring to?
That's good. My guess is, I guess it could be Francisco Alvarez.
Or Lindor.
It also would make sense. Joe Panic played for the San Francisco Giants.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be San Francisco.
Oh, it could be that Francisco. You're right. It's kind of dated at this point.
It is, but it's pretty good.
Would have been a great team name in 2013.
Yes. From Chris.
Panic wasn't in the league yet. 2015.
This one's from Chris. He sent in the Globetrotters.
Okay.
From Ian, and he says these are inspired by Scott's pronunciation of his name. Cole Rayguns. Do you say Rayguns?
Cole Reagans. is how I thought I'd been saying it. Is that the wrong way to say it?
It seems fine.
Is it Regans or
I don't know.
probably not?
Yeah.
I think it's Reagans. Like, if you pluralize the former president's name, there's more than one of them. They are Reagans, right? That's the right way to say it.
That's my lean.
Maybe I said ray guns once. Things come out of my mouth in a weird way. I think I said peaches earlier today, and I don't even remember what I was talking about, but the word peaches came out, and I quickly corrected myself. But if you listen, play it back, listen to the whole thing again. Surprise, I say peaches at one point.
These are from Ryan. Oh, he sent in just the name Full House, and he has a roster that has Tanner Bybee, DJ LeMahieu, Adrian Hauser, Michael Fulmer, Matt Olson, Reese Olson, and Joey Bart. Bonus for the San Francisco connection.
I like it. It's like, I don't know that anybody's going to figure it out unless you explain it to them. It's just kind of a problem, but
it's pretty clever.
Yeah.
It's a TV show I've actually seen, Scott. How about that?
From Stephanie on that roster.
Yeah. From Alex. Classic. Acuna Matata.
Uh-huh.
Strider.
It used to be Acuna Moncada. That was all the rage for a while there.
But Moncada,
no.
Stinks. Strider things.
Okay.
Fopportunity Knox. Y'all remember Jesse Foppert?
I
don't know who that is.
I don't remember much about Jesse Foppert, and I doubt many other people do either.
Who's your Vladdy?
Mm-hmm.
And Tatis faction guaranteed.
All right.
This last group is from Neil, and he has, this is very relevant right now. All I do is win, 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 no matter what. And he even gave us some names here. Mason Wynn, Cole Wynn, and Keaton Wynn.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Only one of which is in the majors, right? No, Keaton Wynn. Be honest.
Majors? Yeah.
I don't know who Keaton Wynn is. Apparently he got a couple spot starts for the Giants earlier this year.
This next one, E Pluribus Nutum.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something to do with Lars Nootbaar, and it's also some kind of saying in the United States.
No, I know the reference, but I don't get the baseball, I guess, because you kind of get Nootbaar's name in there.
Kind of, yeah. Frito, I made it out of clay.
All right.
That's pretty good. Quan Fish, Two Fish, Fred Fish, Luke Fish.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We're done.
It's good to be done.
We're gonna wrap.
Earlier than usual.
Yeah, I know. Let's stop talking before we go for another 5 minutes. We're gonna wrap there for Scott. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.